Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, ATD Painting, and Performance Food Group. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, senior care at its best with a family atmosphere. Obviously, if all seniors had the option, they would be living at home, but sometimes that isn't always possible. Well, guess what? That is where Texan Senior Residential Care Homes comes into the picture. Texan specializes in making its facilities as close to a home living experience as possible. I'm talking full living room, kitchen, dining room, cable TV, music, games, fireplace, you name it. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes has it. They've even got home cooked meals by experts. It's an extra throw-in. Not only that, there are no move-in fees, no visitation restrictions, so your loved ones are free to stop by and visit anytime they please. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes are located at I-635 and Marsh Lane in Dallas, right near Carrollton. For more info, you can call 469-400-7650. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. And now, let's podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor with Star Local Media, and I'm being joined by Devin Hassan, sports editor for the Mesquite News and Rowlett Lakeshore Times, as well as Kendrick Johnson, sports editor for the McKinney Courier-Gazette. Week 2 of the high school football season is in the books, so let's look back on a, I think it's fair to say in hindsight, a very weird week of high school football, if for no other reason than obviously the biggest storyline emerging from last week was obviously the weather. Unless you were playing at the Star in Frisco, your game likely began 2 hours late around the area, and that had an effect on some teams more so than others. Produced a lot of just kind of wonky results all throughout the area, and we will surely get to those those teams in a moment. But obviously the weather was such a such a big storyline that not only did it delay some games, significantly Friday night, but some games had to just outright be canceled. So you had some schools that just flat out didn't even get in a week 2 game after an entire week's worth of preparation, all for naught. By our count, as far as public schools within our markets, you had Rowlett, North Mesquite, Salina, Lovejoy, and R.L. Turner did not play games on in week 2. Those games will not be made up. They're non-district games, so you can afford to not reschedule a game of that magnitude. But obviously there are some side effects of that because these non-district schedules are very, very limited. So to not have a game to draw upon in your preparations for district play, that's a pretty big deal. So gentlemen, Devin, obviously have a couple of these schools in your neck of the woods are now without a game like week 2. A team like Rowlett, which Kendrick, we spent ad nauseum talking about that game last week. That was our game of the week. So apologies for jinxing y'all, Rowlett. But
they jinxed themselves because they picked them.
So now with that game against Rockwall, no longer happening, and with only one game left before you begin district, just talk a bit about whether it was for Rowlett or North Mesquite or whoever, just the consequences of not being able to play a non-district game.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that's going to change their chances of making the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's a short-term deal, but it certainly has an effect on both teams. Mm-hmm. When you look at North Mesquite with their first-year coach and Tim Cedar, they won. They beat Sam Houston that first week. They couldn't wait to get back on that field and build on that momentum and try to keep things going. Mm-hmm. New coaching staff, you're still implementing. These kids are still learning that that program. The differences in the coaching staff. So that's. They'll be fine, but in the short term, the coaches will all tell you they as many reps as possible against other teams. Mm-hmm. We need it, and obviously they missed out on that last week. Same thing with Rowlett. And again, those younger players need those snaps. And I think for Rowlett too, that game against Rockwall last week was going to be kind of a measuring stick against a quality opponent. It's a rivalry game. They play it every year, the Lake Ray Hubbard rivalry. And so you do get a playoff atmosphere when these teams play. And so you miss out on that as well for those younger kids who, get a taste of that big game, environment and going forward.
For them, they got lucky this year because of the new MISD opening being at that game. They played for 10,000 people.
Yeah,
so kind of got and it was hostile territory where at the Lake Ray Hubbard, even though they're playing Rockwall, I know personally, my parents have Rowlett, how everybody goes to that game to be seen.
Yeah.
So
and they were able to get a glimpse of it, week 1. out at the new McKinney Stadium, but you can never have enough of it. Too much of it. It's going to hurt them in the short term. But again, it's not something that's going to have long-reaching effects.
With a team like Lovejoy, I mean that's a program that, because they're in a 9-team district, you're only afforded 2 non-district games. So Lovejoy begins its district schedule this week. In hindsight now, I mean they were supposed to travel out to Sulphur Springs. A team that had a quality season last year, a game that, again, much like you said, would have been a nice little measuring stick trying to build off the momentum of an impressive performance the week prior against Frisco Heritage. But now that's, that Heritage game is all they can really draw upon now. Is there, on Friday, I believe it might be Frisco Memorial that they opened against. They opened up against one of the new Frisco schools. But in a game that, now these games count now.
Yeah,
as far as the playoff picture goes. So, you have only one non-district game to prep for for that district schedule. That can definitely, have some side effects.
Yeah, and that, like, in that scenario, I mean, that could affect your playoff chances, because you get having that turnaround right around to play a team that did get to play last week. One loss in a 9-team district, and that could be the difference between playing in the playoffs and sitting at home.
But I think for them, since they're a team that's used to playing deep in the playoffs, I think it's just another blip in the radar. If they're a team in transition, it would hurt them more than most. This particular case. But what you're saying is very definitely true. One game, you watching a game like us.
It does kind of depend on where your team is at from a program, I guess, developmental standpoint. Like you said with North Mesquite, when you're acclimating under a new head coach, you need all the reps that you can get. Whereas with Lovejoy, especially in a district like that, where it's
cool, we got this.
Where it's perceived to be, I guess, on paper, could be a 4-team district as far as just the upper echelon. So, but nevertheless, I mean, it just stinks to only have one non-district game to prepare for a district schedule. Let's see. So we had plenty of other teams though that did squeeze in some games despite the bad weather. Like I said, some goofy results. So let's just kind of go around the horn. Kendrick, you've been on the the McKinney ISD beat to start the season. We actually didn't get a chance to touch on McKinney ISD last week. So just through 2 weeks, what is just a couple takeaways from the first 2 weeks for McKinney ISD?
We got the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh no.
We start off with the good. The good is McKinney North. Even though they went to the playoffs and went too deep and got beat by Highland Park last year, their defense was shambles. Like, they needed 40 points just to compete every game. Like, they averaged 44 and they gave up 40. That's for the whole season. So
that's always been a team that just offense.
But defense, shout out to Coach Villarreal and them. I don't know what they're doing. They're a lot more physical, and even though they're struggling in the secondary, they make plays when they have to. They weren't making those plays. Like, they've played Justin Northwest twice and given up at least 46 points. They gave up 31 and won 34-31 in a game that even Coach Fetch, I don't know if we win this game last year, and they're finding a way to get it done. Then they played McKinney in week 1 and held them to 13. So they're finding ways to not only get it done but progress as a team, because they've always been winning games. It's like that's gonna catch up to them sooner or later. So it's good to see them. Cam Constantine, 3-year starter, letting everybody know why he's a 3-year starter. Put the team on his back. He threw for 250 and 3 touchdowns, went 16 for 18, and he ran for 136 yards. That's how you take over a game. Now to the bad. McKinney High, 0-2. The record's bad, but they're making progress. They looked a lot more developed on offense. Corjic Dunn is doing his best Matt Gaddick impression. He's averaging over 150 yards a game, had a 195 and 2 touchdowns. They're going to sneak up on somebody. I don't know who their victim is going to be, but they're going to sneak up on somebody. Coach Shavers and them are coaching those guys way too hard. They're bringing a physical mentality. They're doing the things you have to do to be a winning team. It's just they haven't got the results. And then the ugly. Didn't go to the boy game, but I know they got a lot of stuff behind the scenes. They're switching in and out of quarterbacks. This game against Louisville will tell a lot. But that's a team in a lot of disarray going into the most difficult district in the state that you got to have your P's and Q's locked up, or you will get embarrassed. So for their sake and Red Nation's sake, I hope they can work out the behind-the-scenes issues and pick a quarterback or whatever they're going to do, because it's not going to be pretty come 9-6A and Allen them sitting there laughing at you. We got this.
You mentioned obviously McKinney North being able to, try to shed that, that identity where just people only know them for their offense. And they'll need all that, because when they get into that district, against teams like Devon in your neck of the woods with, Poteet just turned in one of the more impressive performances of week 2, and just their handling of Waxahachie. So just, you were kind of, off the radar last week, but just through these first 2 weeks, anything that's kind of jumped out between just in Mesquite ISD football in general?
A couple things. You mentioned the Poteet game. We had talked in our preview about their defense and how those new guys were going to fill in the holes. Mm-hmm. Well, that was the most impressive thing. I saw them play against Denton Ryan, a very good Denton Ryan team in the first game, and they held their own.
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
They did. And then against Waxahachie last week, they went 48-7. Well, the only score for Waxahachie came on a kickoff return. So their defense pitched a shutout. So really impressive bounce back effort for Poteet. One other observation, from my area is you could have a pair of playoff teams down the road who are off to 0-2 starts. Saxe lost on that heartbreaking last-second field goal, 57 yards, I think, against Coppell in week 1, and then dropped a 20-14 decision to a good Euless Trinity team last week in a game that what it sounds like they had every opportunity to win. And Horn, they ran into the Allen juggernaut in week 1, and that wasn't a pretty result. And then but they challenged again. They played Highland Park, another reigning state champion in week 2, fell 35-18. These are two good teams that are going to be in the mix at the end, and I expect both to be in the playoffs. But they could be taking 0-3 records into week 4, because Horn runs into Cedar Hill this week. Cedar Hill thumped John Tyler in week 1, 57-7, and then shut out Denton Geyer last week, 28-0. And Saxe, Plano East, I think Saxe is still considered a favorite over Plano East, but Plano East is off to a 2-0 start too.
Yeah, Plano East looks real sharp.
And so, this is potentially these two, district favorites in some people's eyes could be 0-3 after this week.
My game, I had just one of the weirdest games that I've seen in quite some time. I was out at Plano covering Plano Senior versus El Paso Eastwood, a game that first time these two schools have ever played, first time that Eastwood has played a Dallas area opponent during the regular season. A handful of years ago they played Lamar in the playoffs during when Shane Bouchel was still running the show there. So obviously kind of fascinated just to see that dynamic, and especially with the with the bad weather, just how that would affect things. Well, it ended up producing a game that for one reason or another, I'm probably not going to forget anytime soon. This was so for those who haven't heard, this game just defies every statistical trend under the sun when it comes to what it should take to win football games. One of the most unique games I've seen. So let's just recount some wild statistics from this one. The final score of this game was obviously massive, 72-48. So that alone, obviously this was a ridiculous shootout. For Plano Senior's sake, this was the 4th highest scoring game by Plano in its program history. I had to dig all the way back to
1923.
You're not far off. This was their highest scoring game since 1939, when back then they shut out Van Alstyne 89-0. Yeah, apparently we all know what Plano's did in the 70s and the 80s and whatnot, but back in the early 1900s,
they didn't call the dogs off.
They were laying the wood to some teams because
they call the dogs off.
Because most scores from around that era are 7-0 nothing. Yeah. 7-3. So to ring up 89 on poor Van Alstyne should have been on the field that day.
Well, like okay. They didn't call the dogs.
Well, it's their highest since then. Like I said, it's the fourth highest. So there are two more.
Oh, no.
Two games that took place earlier than that. The highest scoring game in Plano Senior history was in 1929 against Wiley, 102-0.
Oh, ouch.
They didn't know about calling the dogs off back then.
And then 3 years earlier against Salina, they blanked Salina 90-0. So
they don't just beat you. They shoot you out too.
So yeah, records that I'm pretty sure those records are safe.
Yeah,
I don't foresee those being broken. But the big storyline from Eastwood's vantage point coming into this game was just how would they be able to impose their up-tempo approach on offense? How would Plano handle that? Well, if you're just going to look at these raw numbers on paper, you would think that Eastwood had this game in the bag. So on the whole, Eastwood outgained Plano 552-414, so nearly 150 yards of a disparity between those two. Here's the crazy one, though. Eastwood outsnapped Plano 105-25. There was an 80-play disparity. Plano ran.
What an average Plano average to play. That's
Plano.
That's
I was thinking a guesstimate on time of possession. That Plano defense, had to be exhausted.
They were on the field for nearly the entirety of the third quarter. It was nuts. So there was. Eastwood ran 80 more plays than Plano and lost by 28 points.
It's insane to even think about.
So, and here's, okay. So obviously, yes, within 25 plays, Plano was very much, just short fields and just big play, quick drives, just all game long. How about this, though? 72 points scored. They didn't score a point in the first quarter.
Wow.
They were shut out. They were down 6-0 after one quarter, and they and were down 9-0 before just catching fire in the second quarter. And then they went on to score in 9 consecutive possessions. Here were the play counts for those 9 scoring drives: 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 3.
How many one-play tries did they have?
They scored
4?
It was 5. So they scored. Okay, so and they had 2 pick sixes as well. Here's the other thing. Yeah, they had a player, their linebacker Scott Albrecht. He had 3 interceptions, 2 of which were returned for touchdowns.
He had some huddle tape right there. He got some huddle tape,
and he almost had a 4th. I was looking back through one of my highlights. Yeah, he almost had a 4th pick earlier in the game. So that accounted for for 2 scores there. So the offense was responsible for 60 points of 60 of those 72. They scored. I just rattled off those scoring drives. That means they scored 60 points in just 16 plays, including a stretch there in the third quarter where they scored on 3 consecutive plays. Now, part of this was working with short fields. Eastwood played like a team with nothing to lose. They came out. They went for it on 4th down 8 times, including on the very first.
In their own territory?
I thought you were going to say like 3.
No.
You need 2 hands to
count 8 times, including on the very first drive when they were right around like at their own like 30-yard line or whatnot. They played fast and loose, and early on they had some success with that. They marched right down on Plano and scored on their opening drive. Very impressive. And oh my, this might be a game. Little did I know. Obviously you play with fire that much with 4th down conversions. You're going to get the good and the bad, and the bad was that Plano had, a number of short fields to work with. But other than that, there were times where, if I'm just going to look over the scoring log, they had, Tylen Hines, their sophomore running back, who is added this completely different, element, to the backfield with Kyron Cumby and Cody Christ. Tylen Hines, who had 3 touchdowns in that win over Eastwood, he had runs of 33 yards, 24 yards. 38 yards. You had Kyron Cumby doing his thing with a 63-yard touchdown and a 69-yard touchdown.
Kyron Cumby doing Kyron Cumby thing.
Yeah, the final numbers are jarring. Like, Plano only attempted 4 passes all game. The rest of it was rushes. But you had Kyron Cumby who had 7 carries for 146 and 3 touchdowns.
Special. He
had an 18-yard touchdown catch as well. Tylen Hines, like I said, their stud sophomore, averaged nearly 25 yards a carry, 4 carries for 99 yards and 3 touchdowns. Cole Winnett, their quarterback, he got dinged up last week against Hebron. He was back, played in the first half, and he had a 60-yard touchdown run as well. Cody Christ got in on the action with a touchdown in the second half. Plano just did. It was to the point though where it just came at such. It reminded me of the Denton Geyer game last year, where Plano had a similar big play punch. That was the game. That was the game where Cumby had 225 yards on 6 carries, just something wild like that. But it's incredible just to see the team scoring with just such efficiency. But you got to realize the defense was on the field for just an ungodly amount of time, because not only did was Eastwood going for it on 4th down just about every chance they got. They kicked. They attempted 4. They recovered, I should say. They recovered 4 onside kicks in this game. So there were moments where, yes, that's right, just added another element of craziness to this game. So there were moments there in the 4th quarter where this was like a 2-score game, and you're thinking, oh wow, okay, Eastwood might be able to do a little something, just because Plano, for whatever reason, they just could not get their kick coverage, their onside kick coverage on the same page. And it was something that Coach McCullough said that they were working on all week, anticipating that they would have to recover quite a few. And they
the kicker that good?
They had no.
A good kicker to get an onside kick.
mean, honestly, a couple of them were just brain farts on Plano's part. I mean, ones that like just the ball just rolled past like 4 or 5 different Wildcats and just somehow got to it. It was, I mean, yeah, some of them were, not pretty if you're from a Plano standpoint. But
we're both experts in non-6A. How's a game like this get them ready? Since you're not going to see nobody. You see a lot of high-power offense, but not in this 100 plays a game.
I mean, you got
so they basically they were playing 7 seconds or less, but they're playing in football.
Yeah, like I said, the only other time I've seen that offense just move the ball that effortless was against Geyer, which again, that performance seemed like just such a total anomaly when you look at how good Geyer is year in, year out. But again, when you have that kind of explosiveness in your backfield, we've seen it, Kendrick. We know what Kyron Cumbie can do. We know that he's capable of,
I'm looking, so he only had 7 carries. He had 146 yards and 3 touchdowns.
He's capable of busting a touchdown anytime he touches the ball. And honestly, through 2 games, I mean, it said that they're sophomore.
He caught a touchdown, so he had the ball 8 times in his hand and had 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some explosion out of the backfield. So, I mean, it's a team that, much like last year, they did kind of begin the season with this flurry of big plays that eventually kind of fizzled out once you got about midway through the season. But, I mean, listen, Plano's not lacking for explosiveness in the backfield. And, I mean, yeah, I would trust that the defense won't be on the field for 105 snaps another time this season. Yeah. It was, I mean, you could tell that, there was some wear and tear because, like I said, they still gave up 48 points. So Eastwood did have some success moving the ball, especially in the in the second half. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, just one of those weird games. Like Coach McCullough afterwards wasn't even really sure what to make of it. Like, it was kind of bittersweet in a sense for him because on the one hand you had this game that was it's your highest scoring game in almost 80 years. But at the same time, I mean, there was still a lot that, I mean, they gave up 20. I'm looking over the numbers right now. They gave up 31 points in the second half to a team that, I mean, they seemed to, kind of get a beat on in the first half, and then it must have been just, again, the cumulative wear and tear of being on the field so long because they just, I mean, they could not, slow them down with the, like they were able to early on in the second half. So just a weird game, man. That was just, I mean, for so many reasons. So that's a look at least a few things going on in our neck of the woods. We're going to do a wholesale line change in a bit, but not before we catch up with Hebron's star wide receiver Trejan Bridges. The Hawks are off to a 2-0 start. Trejan Bridges is one of the top wide receivers in the state, a big part in that, and we had a chance to catch up with Trejan on his start to the season and the Hawks' hot start, and we'll see what he had to say after a word from the sponsor. Let's take a quick break to talk about ATD painting. Whether it's painting, staining, carpentry, residential, commercial, interior, exterior, if you need it painted, ATD Painting has got you covered. At ATD Painting, their goal is to provide a home improvement experience that is a great value, trouble-free, and enjoyable. And painting is really just kind of scratching the surface as to what these appointments entail. For ATD Painting's interior projects, things like painting, wall repair, ceiling repair, they'll make sure that your floors and furniture are protected and that everything is all cleaned up afterwards. For exterior projects, not only will they do the painting, but they will hand scrape loose paint, reattach loose boards, recalc windows or doors, plus much more. Not only that, if you visit their website right now, atdpainting.com, you can find a coupon for $200 off a complete exterior purchase. Once again, ATD Painting. They've got 4 locations in the Metroplex, including in Plano and Louisville. For more information, call 972-694-8888 or visit atdpainting.com. That is ATD Painting. Check it out to see just how affordable professional painting can be. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
All right, we're here with Darius Snow, junior safety for Hebron's football team. And Darius, thanks for taking a couple minutes to come out and be on the Star Local Media podcast.
No problem.
Well, you guys are 2 games into the season here. Obviously a good start for you guys at 2-0. How do you feel things have gotten rolling for you guys so far?
Well, it's been a great start to the season. We're 2-0, but we don't want to get too confident. Obviously, this will be our last game before a bye, and then we're straight in district. So it's definitely been a great starting point, but we're just trying to build and get better off of it.
You guys faced a Arlington Martin team that's known for some high-powered offenses. You guys did a pretty good job putting the clamps on them last Friday. What did you think the key was to you guys slowing them down?
Well, a lot of it was momentum. It was a 2-hour rain delay, so we knew that the team that was going to win and really take control was a team that came out with more energy. And we did a great job of, even when we stepped on the field, when they announced that the rain delay was over, just keeping the energy up. And I felt like we just pretty much wanted it way more than they did.
So you mentioned the rain delay. What did you guys do to stay fresh? What did you do to occupy your time during that rain delay?
Everybody was doing different things. I personally was just, not walking around too much, but kind of keeping my legs warm, walking around a little bit. I actually was sitting down watching Netflix for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
So, we all did different things, but I felt that it obviously worked out pretty well for us.
Did you just kind of sit here, just kind of waiting for the word to go out? You guys obviously have no idea when you might be playing.
Yeah, we're at the end of the day, we're all high school kids, so we don't really care much for a weather delay. But obviously, there's safety reasons that prevent us from going out there and playing. So we were just all anxious to get out there and play. And when they said that we would be able to, it was just really, really fun for us, and we went on and had a great time.
Well, just to let you know, us media folks are old men, and we don't care too much. We don't care too much for them either. So, obviously, a big win for you guys. Talk a little bit about your guys' secondary. You guys lost some really good players from last year. Obviously, you're coming back, but talk about some of the players around you this year and how you feel the chemistry in the backfield there is looking for you guys.
It's constantly improving. Last year, I was the youngest player on the team personally, and one of our corners, McKinney, really stepped into that big brother role for me and kind of taught me the ways of the game. He's not Oregon doing his thing, but I've definitely been trying to step into that role of being a leader in the secondary. We have some great guys, Diego Johnson, Ryan Allison, our two corners, and then my other safety being Cody Burris. And I felt that really we started to gel together. It really started in the spring when they all came from baseball. All three of them play baseball. So when they all came, we definitely started to build that chemistry, and it's really starting to show here early on in the season.
So you got 4 two-sport guys in the secondary with you also playing basketball, and
yes,
then of course Trejan. Just talk a little bit about that you're kind of balancing your time between the two sports.
Well, I moved around a lot, and for a minute I was just playing basketball. But when I had moved back to Texas in 9th grade, I only played basketball. But that spring, I went out for spring football, and obviously what happened last year happened. So it's definitely something that can be applied or applicable to football, and football can not necessarily really as much as basketball, but can still be applied to basketball. Like for instance, guarding somebody in basketball, a lot of it is just eye discipline, looking at the right things. If you look at the ball playing basketball against a good player, you're gonna get crossed, you're gonna get messed up. If you're looking at somebody's head in football trying to press somebody, you're gonna get messed up. So it's really a lot about just technique, and it definitely transfers over.
Cool. Guys had a good year last year. Obviously faced Allen in the first round of the playoffs, and then you have your quarterback and one of your team leaders. What's just the kind of the atmosphere been around the team with new leadership stepping up following the loss of Clayton and some of the other seniors that you guys had last year?
Well, Clayton was obviously a big loss. Verone being another one. We had a great defensive line, very talented defensive line. Both of them are playing college football, and Paul Akire and Carlos Hatcher. So other than that, we had a whole bunch of talent beside them. So the biggest thing with us was a lot of people, I felt that when we lost a lot of that talent, a lot of people kind of underestimated us, and we just used it as motivation coming into the season. In terms of senior leadership, not necessarily seniors have to lead everybody. So a few of our captains are actually juniors too. So the biggest thing is, one of our quarterback now, Carson Harris, is really stepping into that role. He's really fulfilled it well in the game that he played. Obviously, it worked out well for us. So just as long as we can continue to gel together as a team, I think we'll be great.
Obviously, tough opponent. We mentioned Martin. They were a ranked team. Were you, Coach Brazel's mentioned that maybe you guys made a little bit of a statement. Were you a little bit, maybe even surprised, not so much that you won, but the margin and how comfortable you guys were able to win by?
Well, we always approach every game confident that we're going to win. And I definitely felt that as the game went on and we started to build a lead, I could say, we can run away with this one. And the biggest thing with us was in the past, I can name a few, not off the top of my head, but we would get a lead and then they would come back. And that was one thing that I really was frustrated with last year. But this year we did a great job of keeping our foot on their throats, and just continuing to attack offensively and defensively. And we really just gave it to them.
So you guys have one more non-district game. We were kind of talking earlier about Fossil Ridge and some talented receivers they have over there that you're familiar with. Yes. As a team, what is the focus here this week, and what's kind of the mentality and the mindset of the team going into the last game, getting ready for district?
Well, the first 2 teams we played were Plano and Arlington Martin, as you stated. Those 2 teams were primarily running teams, and the one thing that's new with Fossil Ridge is they are definitely a team that prefers to air it out. So the biggest thing for us, especially as a secondary, is to just get back into that coverage mode, trying to, I guess you can say, just get more comfortable since we've been playing box and a lot of runs recently. Me personally, this is a big game for me because I am a bigger safety and I can cover too, and this will be a great game for me to go out and show that I can. So we're all looking forward to it, and hopefully we can come out with a win.
Well, Darius, thanks for joining us, and you can see Darius and the Hawks taking on Fossil Ridge on the road 7 o'clock Friday to wrap up non-district. So, Darius, once again, thanks for joining us for the Star Local Media Sports Podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
How's it going, and welcome back to the second half of today's Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. We've gone with the full-scale line change here. Head coach Matt Welch has subbed all 3 of us in to talk a little bit about what we saw over the weekend in Texas high school football action. It sounds like the general consensus for us is we want to talk about some teams that have overperformed, maybe underperformed, and just some early season trends here in non-district action. So I guess to kick that off, I'll throw it over to you, JT. I know you have a team that was expected to be good, but has hit the ground running maybe a little faster than even they expected.
Yeah, it's hard to use the terms overperform and underperform. So many of these teams, you don't really know what they have.
Right. Well, it's still so early
kind
too.
Of going off reputation. So, but yeah, Hebron has looked very good so far. They edged out Plano West or Plano Senior to open the season, a game that Matt covered. And then it kind of really turned some heads on Friday by going out there and just pretty much whooping up Arlington Martin.
Yeah, I think I was X-1 in my picks this week, and that was the game I got wrong just because, Hebron looks good, but I did not expect that final score and that final line for
Didn't
sure.
we all pick Arlington Martin to win that game? Except for Kendrick?
Yeah, it was almost a clean sweep, yeah.
But like I said, it's really hard to say overperforming or underperforming. Do we really know what Martin is?
I don't think
for sure.
They're
a regionally ranked team and had a good team last year, but it's so hard to just judge these teams early, especially with, look at a team like Hebron. They lost their opener to Plano last year and still had a great season. So it's tough to base things just on a couple games, but they have looked very good. Carson Harris got his first start Friday was
yesterday.
Yeah.
All that rain from the whole weekend just makes it seem like one long day to me. But he looked pretty good in his debut. Trajan Bridges
did Trejan Bridges things.
Trajan Bridges stuff, making plays all over the field.
Is he the best receiver in the area? Him or Theo East, would you say?
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
But, a lot of people like the Colleyville kid, Cam Brown. But,
a lot of people like East, Jalen Anderson, too. There's a lot of talent, I would say. It just all comes down to who's getting
Bridges
the ball.
Bridges is definitely a get the ball in his hand and let him go, and they're giving him the ball in the Wildcat some this year. He's really making it pay. But I was almost more impressed with their defense. I expected, a pretty prolific attack from Arlington Martin, and Hebron shut them down. Really, the only thing Hebron did poorly was special teams. They had a punt blocked for a safety that got Martin on the board, and then Martin got good field position off the free kick and scored the touchdown. Other than that, they pretty much dominated them defensively. Martin didn't really do a whole lot. So very impressed with Hebron on both sides of the ball. Looking like it could be a showdown in 6-6A between Hebron and a Coppell team that's 2-0, beating Saxe, and then basically shutting out LD Bell. They gave up a touchdown with 15 seconds left, but it was 41-0 before that. So they'll get a big test against Allen this week, obviously, but looking like it could be, looking at some of the other scores in 6-6A, looking like this could be a 2-team race between Coppell and Hebron.
Right. Maybe that's the question instead of overperformed or underperformed is just, how have these first 2 weeks, the teams that did get to play in the rain-affected weekend, how has this maybe changed their outlook or changed their expectations or kind of set them up maybe for different expectations than we originally had?
That's a nice win over Arlington Martin, but is anybody really that surprised?
Right.
We came back to
maybe
the office Friday.
way.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
The way they won.
Yeah,
I think the only surprising thing is I looked at that final score because that was a coin flip game for me in picking it last week, and I took Martin just kind of based on how the strengths of the team and what little I knew about them. But it didn't surprise me that Hebron won. But then you look at the final score and you're like, yeesh! How does that I think was definitely the takeaway for me. That
I guess maybe impressive is the word more than overperforming because I don't think I'm really too surprised that Hebron and Coppell are 2-0, but
Right.
they both have been impressive.
Speaking of not being surprised, the Plano East offense, I've seen them play twice at this point, and that offense is every bit the machine that people expected it would be, I think, coming into this season. 429 yards against LD Bell, which we've kind of found out, and I knew that heading into week one that LD Bell isn't, going to light the world on fire, and they're not a great team this year. And same could be said for Lake Highlands. Plano East went out at the Cotton Bowl against Lake Highlands.
You're about to get some hate mail from LD Bell.
And took them down 36-0 in a rain. That was a weird game. The rain really messed with that one out at the Cotton Bowl. It started late, and then with I think like 7 minutes left in the third quarter, there was a huge delay. They came back, played into the fourth quarter. And I believe there was like 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They went off the field again and ended up just sacking it up and saying, "This is fine. We're done doing this. It's 36-0. Let's not get anybody hurt." I guess was the thought process. But Plano East had 404 yards in that game and could have easily, I think, had another 100 or so, because they, unlike kind of week one, they had 2 passing touchdowns and 3 touchdowns on the ground with Trey Jones Scott, which, by the way, for people that read my stories and have seen his name is Scott Jones, I did check with head coach Joey McCullough, and I think he's flipped it to Jones Scott this year. So that's not me just like being dyslexic. I did check with him and with Plano East, but he had 158 yards on the ground, looked really good, scored 3 times, as I mentioned. Brandon Mallory looked like Brandon Mallory, 14 for 24 Saturday for 238 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think just overall, the East hasn't really been tested yet, I think, in the way that they need to be. They will be this week, certainly, taking on Saxe.
Lake Highlands was a playoff team last year.
Yeah, I think that Lake Highlands, maybe I expect them to be a little bit more competitive than they were.
That was in a weaker district, though. That was in the Coppell and the RISD.
I mean, they might be a playoff team this season, just with the district they play in. I just don't think that my expectation heading into this game, I think I predicted in my preview East by 21 or so. So, I mean, I kind of expected the result, but it was the way that East went about it, and they've looked very mature on offense and very poised, and it's looked easy, frankly, that their passing game has looked very easy. But I think the thing they're impressed with is their defense has looked really good. Held LD Bell to 14, obviously shut out Lake Highlands. Again, not the most prolific offenses in the area, but just really gets me ready and hopefully the 2 teams ready for this matchup this weekend between Saxe and Plano East, because I think that's a really good 0-2 Saxe team. I think that's another argument for they're not underperforming. They've just played two really tough non-district games and happen to come out on the losing end of both. But that's a really good Saxe team. Their only question maybe is a little bit of quarterback. Beltran had 2 picks, but that'll be a good matchup this weekend, and one I think that'll tell us a lot about both Saxe and Plano East. So
my alma mater needs a win. Like you said, the 0-2 record doesn't show how good they really are.
They were right in both of those games.
Yeah,
they were right there against Trinity. The final drive.
They need to win over Plano East to avoid going 0-3. But we were talking about good receivers. We missed one in the Colony, Keith Miller, who had the play of the week. It even got national recognition on SportsCenter's top 10. It was number 4 on SportsCenter's top 10. He made a one-handed grab in the back of the end zone over a defender from Reedy, and that was an awesome game. Reedy and the Colony. Colony kept it close. Reedy looks really good this year. A team that, I can't say they've overperformed because we kind of expected this, but the way they've won their games, the way they beat Plano West and how they beat the Colony, even though the score was a little close, Reedy was still in control. They never really, it was never really in jeopardy, it felt like.
Right.
Even though the Colony was kind of hanging in there a little bit. And it wasn't a blowout by any means, but man, that catch was awesome. And I love how it's at the Star. The game was inside the Star, so you get the replay on the big screen. So they played it again, and man, it was spectacular.
That's why it's so hard to talk about who the best receiver in the area is, because I think they're all good at different things. Like Jalen Anderson had that catch for Plano East in week 1 on the 2-point conversion where Matt and I talked about it at length last week during the podcast, but you look at all these guys and they're all good at different things, and I think the argument for Bridges maybe is his explosiveness and his ability to, like you said, go out of the Wildcat or do other things. Like he's the kind of guy that you just want to find a way to get him the football and just say, go make things happen. Whereas, a guy like Jalen Anderson is obviously impressively talented, but at the same time, it's more his ability to go up and get the football than necessarily, we're just going to get you in space. So I think they all bring different things to the table, but definitely an impressive class of receivers this year for sure. So
So now are we off to underperform teams?
Sure.
Because I have a couple.
Sure.
I have a few.
Oh no, that sounds ominous.
Unfortunately, Little Elm, they had a tough test in week 1 against Justin Northwest. They lose in double overtime. And I guess that carried over into week 2, Friday night against Birdville. And they lose another tough one. They kind of got blown out in this one. They lost to Birdville 33-14. So they start the year 0-2 after starting last year 3-0 for the first time in over a decade. They're 0-2 now, in jeopardy of starting 0-3 against it. They face Keller Central this Friday, another tough opponent. And their quarterback Juan Ponce, he comes in, taking over for Logan Kohler, who's just sticking with baseball this year. And Ponce had his first, not so good game. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. He had, threw 3 picks, completed his 7 passes, 105 yards. I wasn't at the game, so I don't, couldn't tell what was going on. But just looking at the box score, it doesn't look pretty. But I expect a little of them to bounce back. I don't think this is indicative of their, this season of this roster. This is not a bad team at all. This might be the best team that Little Elm has rolled out since I've been covering the team for the past 3 seasons. So it's kind of weird that they're 0-2. Especially after going 3-0 last year. So big. I know this game Friday night against Keller Central doesn't matter for the playoffs.
Right.
Starting 0-3.
You got to get momentum somewhere. I feel like that's kind of the case for a lot of these teams.
Especially with them facing Lone Star next week. That's going to be a tough way to start the district, and you really don't want to start 0-4.
Right.
That would be pretty bad. So a little bit of underperformance there for the Lobos. Kind of surprising.
Yeah, I think a team for me, I don't want to call it underperforming because, a team that went 0-10 last year, it's hard to say that, they're underperforming this year. But I think Plano West had a lot of confidence going into the year. And thought that they would be more competitive, and they were not, certainly in week 1, and that 32-point, I believe, blowout loss to Reedy at home. But they were a little bit more competitive last week. They traveled to Flower Mound and took on the Jaguars in another rain-affected game. That game didn't start until 8:45, and I didn't get out of there, I don't think, till like 12:30. It was a long one. It was a long game. But West looked a little bit more competitive. There was a point where, the turnover battle was what eventually sunk the Wolves, which is, I think they lost it. I think they had 6 turnovers to Flower Mound's 1, something like that. So you're not going to win a lot of football games when you're turning the ball over that many times. But if not for those turnovers, there would have been a point where West recovered an onside kick in the 4th, and they would have been down 7 had they not turned the ball over for 2 consecutive drives at the start of the second half. So there was some compete there for West, and they have Mesquite this week, which I think is a winnable football game. One of those 0-2 teams has to get a victory there. So it's not an underperformance, like you said, just because I don't know what the expectations were externally for West this year after going 0-10. But this week 3 might be a chance for them to get in the win column and kind of validate some of the confidence they feel, and some of they feel like they're a better team than going 0-10 and starting 0-2. So they get a win. In week 3, maybe they surprise a couple of people in district, but it's definitely still an uphill climb for West, I guess.
JT, one of your team. Before I cut you off there, one of your teams got a big win over Frisco School last week.
Absolutely,
that was kind of surprising.
We're on the downward trend right now, and Denton County's had a pretty good week. Not too much went around for the schools I cover, and Creekview gets its first win of the year, winning in overtime. Right, I think I saw in overtime. So really tough opener for Creekview, but bouncing back and getting the big win over Liberty,
Frisco Liberty,
on Friday. So win for them. R.L. Turner started their game, but it got canceled. Newman Smith, they didn't get the win, but they were playing a 6A program in Nimitz, so can't really fault them for that. And then the LASD schools, other than the Colony losing the tough one to Reedy, they posted 4-0 records. So pretty good showing from my teams last week. And District 6A, pretty good showing in general. They went 7-1 last week. They only have one team without a win, and that's Irving. So everybody's either 1-1 or 2-0 in that district, including MacArthur and Nimitz, kind of both 2-0. Maybe a little surprise there.
Yep.
So every team you cover is state bound, pretty much.
Yes.
They're legit.
You're going to cover a state champion, is what you're saying.
No, but just good bounce backs for the teams that lost in their openers. Flower Mound, Marcus, Louisville all got wins. Coppell, Hebron go to 2-0. Creekview gets its first win, and so a pretty good week for the Denton County programs that we cover.
All right, guys. You guys have anything else you want to add from week 2 impressions, Texas high school football?
That's about it. I think we touched it all.
I think that's pretty much
I'm
a
back
wrap.
here next Monday with completely different thoughts on it.
Yeah, hopefully the rain isn't such a factor in week 3 here. We got some premier matchups, including Frisco Reedy, Lake Dallas, Plano East, Saxe, and more. Those games, I believe,
Hebron.
they should be up.
Lone Star Highland Park too.
Yeah, lots of area matchups, lots of big games. Some districts, some non-districts. So we'll see how those shake out. I believe our Game of the Week poll will go up soon, so you guys can vote on that. And we will be back Thursday to discuss the eventual winner of that Game of the Week poll, as well as some of the other big matchups that we just mentioned. So we will talk to you guys then. Until then, have a good start to your week.
Thanks for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast, brought to you by Performance Food Group. Performance Food Group delivers more than 150,000 food and related products to customers all across the country. If you want to get in on that process, PFG just might have a spot for you. Their McKinney office is currently hiring. Job openings include Class A CDL drivers and warehouse order selectors, as well as many other entry and part-time positions. An ideal choice for college students or people just wanting to find new careers in general. For more information, you can visit their website at pfgc.com/careers for more job openings. If you prefer to contact them by phone, you can call at 214-491-3130 for more details. Once again, that is Performance Food Group, located in McKinney at 500 Metro Park Drive.